Hello, everyone. Welcome to Precision in your DLC submission. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We're going to give an opportunity for a few more people to join. Thank you for joining today. We hope that the information we present to you guys will be very helpful in your future application submissions. For those joining, we will be getting started shortly. We're just giving a couple more minutes for other attendees to join. All righty. Well, once again, everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar, More Precision in Your 5.1 DLC Submission, will basically go over some of the typical issues that we see during our 5.1 submissions that can cause delays in the process. On today's agenda, we'll go through how to stay up to date, some of the top causes for application processing delays, and then we'll have time for a question answer. During that question and answer, you can use the chat feature, or during the webinar, you can use the chat feature as well. We encourage you to, if there are specific application questions pertaining to your specific product, please email them to applications@designlights. And for applications that are in process, please send those messages via the application portal so the reviewer can get to those messages as soon as possible. I also want to note that today's webinar is being recorded, and the webinar will be posted on the DLC website after the webinar. Before we get started, I want to introduce our team today. I am Bernadette Boudreau. I'm the Senior Technical Operations Manager here at the DLC, and I am being joined by my colleague, Aaron Feldman. He's the Senior Technical Operations Manager here at the DLC as well. And the colleagues of mine who are going to be managing your chat are Dave Ryan and Rachel Goff. I'm sure some of those names are familiar to you guys, from DNR International, and they'll be responding to all of the chat questions. At the end of the question and answer, we will be reading some of those questions aloud. For questions that we deem would be good for the entire audience to hear, we will be reading those questions aloud at the end. Okay, so let's get started. Just a reminder, the DLC is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to achieve energy optimization by enabling controllability with a focus on quality, people, and the environment. Some of our efforts in 5.1 address that mission. All of our technical requirements in version 5.1 are new color quality requirements that help provide good color rendering with better color consistency over time. Another goal of our technical requirements are lighting decision makers will have the ability to use the DLC premium classification to have more confidence in the glare performance of listed products. As well, a goal of 5.1 is that virtually all listed products are dimmable, which provides increased energy savings and improved user satisfaction. So, how do you stay up to date with what's going on with 5.1 if there are any updates? One thing that we want everyone to keep in mind during the submission process is that we sometimes make slight modifications to the application forms. Due to that, we encourage you to download the latest application file from the DLC website before you make a submission. We sometimes include different tips and tools in those forms that guide you through the application process and give you more information that will help prevent submission errors. So we encourage you to always download the latest application files from the DLC website. The link is here. Also, we encourage you to sign up to the DLC newsletter. At the footer of the DLC website, you will see a link to stay connected. This will give you access to the newsletter where you will get regular updates on not only 5.1 requirements, but also general DLC updates on all programs. We also encourage you to take a look at the technical requirements page under version 5.1. We've recently added a link to recent policy clarifications and updates. During our release of 5.1, we've gotten some comments and made some clarifications to the policy that we believe will make certain information in the policy clear to submitters. So we encourage you to take a look at those, to look at some of the latest updates that we've made to the policy, including some language in the document. An example of some of those recent updates is shown here. This is actually pulled from that technical requirements update page, where you will see how we will tell you when the update was made, what subject it is regarding, what it was regarding, a policy change or just guidance, description of that change, and where you can find the information on that page regarding the document and the affected page. We also want to point you to some technical requirement guidance resources. We know that many of the 5.1 requirements and the testing required for that is new to your DLC submission process. So the DLC has put together some very good guidance documents that will help guide you through what is needed on certain testing reports, how to understand certain definitions within the policy, and guidance on how to submit certain files. If you go to the link on the website that is listed here, you will find all of these guidance documents. Now we'll go into a little more detail on some of the top causes of application processing delays. After the release of the 5.1 applications, we compiled a list of some of the common issues that we see during submissions and have summarized those here today to give you submitters more information on how to prevent those moving forward. One particular area where we see some errors is during the reported control capabilities. In this section of the application form, it is important that you fill out all of the control information columns appropriately. All columns except for the LLLC model name require an entry. So in the past, there may have been some selections where if you left it blank, that meant no, or you didn't want to report the information. But for controllability capabilities, we require you to select no if you don't want any information there. If you do not list no, what happens is a reviewer may have to reach out to you for clarification on your control capabilities, which can cause a delay in your submission. More detail regarding controllability reporting is some of the specifics regarding those claims. We have 3 different controllability reporting requirements: dimming, integral controls, and control communication. All of this information must be included in the application form, but it must also be reflected on the spec sheets in your that you are submitting. So we need to ensure that whatever you're specifying as controllability capabilities on your spec sheet also reflects what you have in your application form. More detail on the PUDs that requires these controllability capabilities are located in the technical requirements in the sections that are highlighted here. For integral controls, it is important that your spec sheet or additional literature that you upload be clear about the control options that are available. They must clearly indicate which model numbers have these options available. It needs to also match the reporting on the application form, as we stated on the previous slide. One important thing to note about integral control reporting is that your spec sheet literature must explicitly and exactly match the acceptable terms for control, sensors, and communication protocol as described in the policy. We've highlighted this section here. So, for example, if you want to list an occupancy feature, you must use the acceptable terms occupancy sensor, vacancy sensor, motion sensor, or exterior motion sensor on your spec sheet. If those terms are not listed, a reviewer will have to reach out to you for clarification on your reporting options, which could cause delay in your application processing. The same occurs for control communication reporting. In the technical requirements, there are a list of acceptable terms that can be used to describe your control communication type via either wired or wireless. Those acceptable terms are listed here, and we encourage you to ensure that your spec sheets list those terms exactly and explicitly so that a reviewer does not have to reach out to you for clarification. The only areas where you do not have to list a specific term is in the other categories, where it is up to the manufacturer to list whatever they specify there. At this time, I will transition the presentation over to my colleague, Aaron Feldman, who will go over the other topics that cause delays in application processing. Aaron, take it away.
Thank you, Bernadette, and thank you all for joining this webinar. I'll first talk to some common application errors related to the new 5.1 color requirements, followed by test report formatting errors, and we'll wrap up with a review of existing resources and the Q&A. As Bernadette mentioned at the top of the presentation, please submit your questions in the question pane throughout the webinar, and we'll answer as many as possible during the presentation and a few live at the end. The first item I will discuss is the reporting of color data. When filling out the version 5.1 application form, you must enter data in for all of the color metrics for each product in your application. Specifically, these are columns O through T in the application form and are shown in the screenshot here. All of these columns must be filled out regardless if your products are qualifying via the CIE metrics, which are CRI and R9, or the TM30 metrics, RF, RG, and RCSH1. I will go into a bit more detail on that topic in the next slide. Bernadette, if you can move the next slide. As I mentioned, full color data must be provided on all products in your application form. Similarly, full color data, that is CRI, R9, and the TM30 metrics, must be provided in all LM79 color reports. The box section on this image on the right is from the version 5.1 technical requirements and highlights the minimum color requirements for DLC standard. Per the requirements, products can qualify through 2 different methods, using CRI and R9 or by using the TM30 metrics. Even though one set of requirements must be met in order to qualify products to the QPL, both are needed to be provided in the LM79 color reports and on the application form. Next slide. This slide shows the proper formatting to display the required TM30 metrics in your LM79 color reports. The screenshot on the left side of the screen shows the required format to be included in all LM79 color reports and was published by ANSI and IAS in the TM3018 standard and can be found in Annex D, Figure D3 in that standard. There is an Excel calculator published by IAS which will output your photometric data in this format. This Excel is free on the IAS website. Utilizing this Excel and format to incorporate the TM30 report into your LM79 color report is the best way to ensure there are no items missing. Next slide. In addition to the TM30 graphic, there are a few other items required in the LM79 color report. These details can be found in the additional reporting section of the version 5.1 technical requirements. We have also created a resource document shown on the left side of this slide that is available from our version 5 transition page of the website. And this is one of the many resources Bernadette mentioned a few slides into the presentation. On the right of this slide, you can see an example summary page for the LM79 color report. Including the details shown on a summary page at the beginning of your LM79 color report is a great way to show the results of the test and will allow for a quick review. Next slide. All LM79 color reports must be accompanied by an SPDX file with data from the same test as the LM79 color report. The IAS TM21 standard contains information on the SPDX file format. In this standard, there are a number of different elements that can be included. For the DLC review, we only require the elements noted here on the left. That is manufacturer, model number, lab, report number, date, and SPD data. If any of these data elements are missing, the reviewer will request an updated file. So prior to submitting any SPDX files, ensure they contain all of the necessary data elements. Next slide. As I mentioned on the last slide, an SPDX file must be submitted with every LM79 color report. This file must follow the IAS TM27 standard and have an SPDX extension. Any other file format, such as Excel outputs with XML extension, will not be accepted. If any LM79 color reports are submitted and the corresponding SPDX file is not submitted, the reviewer will request the corresponding SPDX file. So please ensure the SPDX file is submitted with every LM79 color report submitted in the application. Next slide. Similar to LM79 color reports, LM79 distribution reports also have specific elements required. These screenshots here are snippets of the resource we have online titled Guidance for Submitting IES Files. Highlighted on this page are the specific elements and requirements for an LM79 distribution report to be considered complete and accurate. On the next slide, I'll go into a bit more detail on each of those elements. Within the IS LM63 standard, there are a few elements that are required and are also required for DLC review. These elements are report number, test lab, report date, and manufacturer. There are other elements that are not specifically required by LM63. However, they are required in order to properly assess test reports during the DLC application review. The first element I will mention is the catalog or model number. This model number must exactly match the model numbers listed on the Luminaire spec sheet and align with the models listed on your application form. Any discrepancy in the model number between the application form, specification sheet, and test reports will delay the DLC review. For instance, if certain Luminaire characteristics are left off of the model number in the test report, it may require the reviewer to obtain clarification and slow down the application review. This check regarding the model number applies to all submitted test reports and documentation. Regarding the multiplier element, this field must be 1. New in version 5.1 of the technical requirements, all submitted IS files must be the result of the tested Luminaire shown in the catalog or model number. Scaled IS files will not be accepted. I will go into a bit more detail on the luminous dimension field in a few slides. However, this field must be complete and accurate with every IS file submitted. Next slide. With all LM79 distribution reports, input voltage is required for DLC evaluation. However, there is no specific tag within the LM63 standard. Voltage can be represented in the IS file using the other tag or creating a user-defined tag. When using these tags, ensure the language and descriptions are clear for the reviewer. Input voltage can also be included in a separate PDF that accompanies the IS file. The PDF and IS file must be clearly related through the use of the same report number and other matching data. Including all of the necessary elements of a full LM79 distribution report within the IS file is recommended, rather than including the voltage in a separate PDF document. Next slide. As I mentioned on a previous slide, the luminous dimensions must be included in each IS file submitted. The luminous dimensions are defined in the LM63 standard as the light emitting opening of the luminaire, not its physical dimensions. To simplify, it is the smallest shape that includes all of the light emitting surfaces of the product. We understand that many luminaires have unique form factors or multiple light emitting surfaces. These can cause confusion on how to represent them in the IS file. For these cases, we have created a resource document with a number of examples to help explain how to determine what shape to use to represent the luminous dimensions in the IS file. The image on the right shows a snippet of a few of these examples. Next slide. And we'd also like to emphasize again that we have created a number of resources for submitters to help navigate through these new requirements. These resources address many of the new version 5.1 technical requirements, how to test for them, and how to ensure reports are complete and accurate. This slide shows 6 of the 8 resources currently published. The 2 not shown are Understanding Unified Glare Rating, or UGR, which contains the information I mentioned on the previous slide. The other resource not shown here is titled Choosing Configurations for Efficacy Testing under version 5.1. We hope that these resources can help be a guide for you as you submit version 5.1 applications. Next slide. And with all that said, we'd like to thank you for listening in on this webinar, and we'll now go into the Q&A session. Throughout the webinar, David and Rachel have been answering individual questions and have been pulling some that will be beneficial to share with the audience. We'll address as many of these questions as possible. However, if there are questions that we cannot get to or for specific applications, we will follow up individually and answer via email.
Thank you, Aaron. Attendees, go ahead and submit any questions you may have. In the meantime, I'm going to remind the team about the schedule regarding old and new versions of the technical requirements. All products that are still version 4.4 and our DLC standard will be delisted from the QPL on December 31st of 2020. Products that are still version 4.4 DLC premium and meet the DLC version 5.0 standard requirements will be transitioned to version 5.0 standard on December 31st of 2020. Version 5.0 applications will be accepted until January 31st of 2021. And after that date, only version 5.1 applications will be accepted. Any version 5.0 products that have not been updated to version 5.1 by December 31st, 2021 will be delisted from the QPL. I see some more questions coming in.
I can answer one of the questions. So a question came in about the model number and catalog code, specifically if certain options in your Luminaire catalog code can be left off of the test reports if they do not have any performance impact. So in general, yes, those can be left off and included as a wildcard in the test report. However, to ensure there's no miscommunications or other uncertainty by the reviewer, it is best to just include the whole catalog logic for the fixture that was used in the test. And that will just eliminate any possibility that there's confusion or a misunderstanding.
Okay.
And I could take another question here. A question came in regarding the types of tests that would be allowable to be considered for your lowest lumen output configuration. For everyone on the call, in your DLC applications, you must submit an LM79 color report for your lowest lumen product per the family grouping policy. And that lowest lumen test does need to come from a LM79 color report and meet all of the requirements listed in the additional reporting requirements section of the version 5.1 technical requirements.
Okay. The next question, I see a question from that came in regarding TM30 reporting. The TM30 report has been added at the end of the LM79 formatted template. Is that sufficient? Yes, that is sufficient and preferred. We prefer the TM30 information to be a part of your LM79 submission and not a separate document. So yes, that is an applicable approach to reporting your TM30.
Another question came in regarding the IS files. Specifically, does the Luminaire model number need to be slated under Luminaire CAT database field or the Luminaire database field? And either of those options are acceptable. It just needs to be clear that that is the catalog number that matches your specification sheet and your other documents. But Lumin CAT or Luminaire fields are acceptable.
Okay. We see some questions regarding private labeling and how this affects private labeling. For private labeling, essentially, you still have to meet the same requirements that an OEM needs for your LM79 reporting. So that is how the private labels are affected in regards to these requirements. So you must meet the same requirements for any LM79 testing as the OEM would for listing the OEM product.
Question came in regarding the lowest lumen configuration test. So that requirement hasn't changed, and the process to determine what configurations need testing haven't changed in version 5.1. But just to address the question, it was, do we need a lowest lumen that meets both standard and premium, or can it be whichever it happens to meet? For your lowest lumen test, it is the lowest lumen for the entire family. If that family has both DLC standard and DLC premium products, just one test is needed for that lowest lumen configuration.
One other question on private label products. If OEM products are updated to 5.1, will private label items be automatically updated? The answer is no. You will be required to update those products, those private label products as well, but you will be able to update those products after the OEM product has already updated. Okay. Any other questions coming in here? Is the timeline for private labels the same as OEM? Yes, it is. And you can find that timeline on the DLC website. I apologize, we didn't have it in the presentation today, but the timeline for delisting and when applications are no longer could be accepted, as I described in the initial part of the question and answer, is located on the DLC website. And there are additionally more details to explain that timeline in the manufacturing guidance that is located in the V5 transition page on the DLC website. Okay. Aaron, are there any more questions that need to be addressed this time?
I don't see any questions come in that would be appropriate at this point to bring up with the group. Perhaps maybe we'll give folks one or two more minutes, and then give you guys back some time to your day.
Okay.
So
one last, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, sure. I did see a question come in regarding a product that is suitable for multiple primary use designations. And if your product does fit in two different primary use designations, such as a linear ambient and a low bay application, and fits in those categories from a form and function point of view, and also meets all the requirements for those primary use designations, then you can list it in both of those designations. They will be two different product IDs on the QPL, but it will have the same model number and the same data. They will just be listed as two product IDs on the QPL for users to see.
Okay. Well, once again, on behalf of the DLC, myself, Bernadette Boudreau, Aaron Feldman, and our chat monitors, Dave Ryan and Rachel Goff, we'd like to thank you very much for attending this webinar. We also want to let you know that this webinar will also be hosted in Mandarin next week at this same time, not at the same time, but next week on Wednesday, of course, at a time more feasible for our international clients. Please look on the DLC website for information on how to register for that. And for any questions that were specific to you or your situation, we will be following up with a response on those via email. So thank you very much. Aaron, if there's nothing else you want to say, we'll close out the webinar for today.
No, thank you all for joining, and we hope that the webinar has been helpful and you guys will be able to submit products a little more smoothly.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.